Apple monopolizing smartphones, an auto dealer not giving you the price that they quoted online, price fixing at apartment complexes. I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau of the Pacific Southwest. This is the Joe Knows Better podcast, and we're with Attorney General Kris Mayes. Kris, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Joe. It's good to be with you.
All those things you've done in the last few days, actually.
Yeah.
All of those are actions that you've taken in that period of time. We're going to talk about those in a minute. So you've been on the job for a little over a year.
Yeah. It's been about a year and a quarter at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
It's amazing. Time flies when you're
not having fun?
Working hard. I'm having a blast, but it's...
Are you?
Yeah, I really
What's fun about the job?
Oh my gosh. The best part of the job is what we're about to talk about is the fact that, I get to be on the front lines of protecting consumers. And I always felt like prior to running for Attorney General and while running for Attorney General that the bread and butter of any Attorney General's office should be protecting consumers. The Consumer Fraud Act in Arizona is very strong. The consumer fraud section within the civil division of the AG's office is strong. I think this is basically central to the mission of the Attorney General. Interesting just historically when you look at other AGs across the country, consumer protection has become central to what they do as well. And so I love it. It's fun. I mean, it's great.
I didn't think you had the laws that you needed. I mean, I always thought I came from California, where everything's regulated. Yeah. And here, it seemed like nothing was. So it seems like you wouldn't have the ability to go after people maybe the way you wanted to.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you can always, want more and ask for more. And there are probably ways that we can fine tune our laws and things that I think we'll be proposing
through the legislature, though.
Through the legislature that we'll be proposing to make some things better. I'll give you an example. Yeah. I think that we're going to talk about the RealPage lawsuit that I filed against landlords and RealPage, and it came up. Someone raised the question: what about mobile home parks, which are increasingly being bought up by Wall Street firms, and they're seeing rent increases? And I went through and looked at the Mobile Home Park Act in Arizona. We have one, believe it or not.
There is one?
Yeah,
okay.
There is one.
It's a sentence.
Not great enforcement, though. not great enforcement mechanism. Yeah. So there's always things we can fine tune, but we do have a strong Consumer Fraud Act. Okay. We do have antitrust laws that they just haven't been used, Joe. Especially antitrust laws.
So it's like dust off the blow off the spider webs and the Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're using them because this is a lot of good stuff and affects a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do you think is this is hard, one of the most pressing, we're going to get into these specifically, but one of the most pressing issues for consumers. Now, we're talking, you're an Arizona Attorney General. These are people who are probably listening in California as well, so probably generally these are concerns. But something that comes to mind for consumers that you think is important that's going on right now that shouldn't?
Boy, what really kind of keeps me up at night for consumers and for my job in protecting consumers is just how easy it has become for scammers to reach consumers, especially with the rise of social media. And I think also there are things related to the pandemic that, the loneliness that was created during the pandemic, people I think are more vulnerable now because sometimes we're more lonely and scammers can get at you and people can fall prey to scammers when they're lonely. The AI scams, the rise of AI and people cloning voices and using voices to get money out of you, to extort money out of you, grandparents being called and with the voice of their child or their grandchild on the line. Those kinds of things worry me, and that technology and the social media is I think something that we really have to get our hands around.
Is there, I'm going to plug the BBB Scam Tracker. It's good. You can look at, if you go to bbb.org, you can go to Scam Tracker, and you can look nationally at the live scams and also locally and what in your area, what those scams might be. You can also report them there.
I love it. It's a great tool.
Yeah, I think so too. It kind of gives patterns and things to avoid. No, wait, that happened. That's what they said to me. Maybe I shouldn't call them back or whatever it is. Or just don't answer your phone, which I always say.
Well,
don't answer your phone unless it's a contact.
It's a great point. I mean, and it's a sad commentary. Like nowadays, people are feeling like they can't answer their phone.
Right.
But that there's a point there. But that tool, and I think it allows people to sort of be their own first line of defense, right? And so that's one of the key things that we tell people is don't immediately say yes. If somebody is calling you and is trying to pressure you, hang up the phone and look at the BBB tool that allows you to sort of track scams and say and cross-check it, or hang up the phone and call a friend.
Take a step back.
Take a step back.
Yep.
Don't be pressured. If somebody's trying to pressure you, they're probably trying to scam you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a key. Take it in a lot of these decisions. I mean, a lot of stuff, even that goes on with like legitimate businesses sometimes where you have this deal and you're just not sure. If you're not sure, I almost think step back.
Step back.
Think about it. It's going to be there tomorrow. If not, then they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. But this is only good right now, and you have 1 hour to be able to get it done.
Yeah. And I think also be aware of people who are asking you to pay with cryptocurrency.
Yeah, it's huge right now.
Be aware of some gift card payment requests, those types of things.
Are those frustrating? What can you do with those complaints? Can you go after? I mean, these scammers a lot of times aren't in this country.
Yeah.
It's the state of Arizona. What power do you have to go after some of these people? Can you just trace them so far? Or?
It's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And that's what frustrates me the most, especially about this is so for instance, a lot of times these scammers, the ones in different countries, will ask people to wire money.
Yeah.
And we actually have a law enforcement tool, and I won't get into too much of the detail, that allows us to track wire transfers. And it is heartbreaking to see how many wire transfers there are out of places like Sun City to places like Nigeria.
Yeah.
And once the money is wired,
mm-hmm.
it is so hard to get back, especially if it's an international wire.
Yeah.
So that is why what you are doing and what the Better Business Bureau is doing is so important, which is to help people educate themselves about how not to get scammed in the first place. That is the only foolproof way to prevent these scams is to not get scammed in the first place.
What's so funny, what's so interesting when I was doing this thing with ABC 15 and other places, we would talk to people who would say, why are you doing that one again? Nobody's going to fall for that scam. Then some of those same people, though, would come back to me and say, oh, I got that call.
Yeah.
And they were like, I wasn't sure what I should do. I'm like, yeah. Oh. Once you get the call or you're involved, they can get to you. I mean, you're like, people don't know until it happens to them how convincing this stuff can be.
Absolutely. And it's, we're all vulnerable to it. I was talking to a friend who I had worked with in a previous life at a very high level of an organization, who called to let us know about a scam. He had been scammed out of $50,000. And he knew how important it was to let us know about it. At first, he felt ashamed, and I think that's how a lot of people feel, is ashamed that they fell victim. But you don't feel ashamed, because it can happen to anyone, and so that's why it's important to let us know. You can always go. You can always go to BBB. You can go to azag.gov to report a complaint, to file a complaint, because we need to know about it if it's happened to you.
And then you can go further with that, right? You can do what you can, I guess. If it's out of the country, is it something, though, that's reported to the federal people so they know that this is a bigger scam than it is? And
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about some of these specific things, and then we can go back. Let's talk about, I guess the most recent is the Apple.
Yeah.
The Apple monopolizing smartphones. Wow. How Come on, no.
Yeah,
No.
I know
Wait, what?
I know it seems so
No.
obvious, right? And
Yeah.
and that it happened. It's just that previous administrations, I think, were not, frankly, as interested in enforcing our antitrust laws as President Biden's administration and certainly mine here in Arizona. So the Department of Justice filed this lawsuit claiming that that Apple has monopolized the smartphone market essentially, and I think more importantly than that even is sort of the some of the tactics they've utilized, making it hard to do messaging, slowing down messaging between Apple phones and Samsung phones and other phones. People notice. Yeah, often you notice, or if somebody's messaging you from a non-Apple phone, it takes a lot longer, and it even pops up in a green bubble, so it's different.
So that's not so that. Why is that? Would you call it allegedly illegal, or is it something? I mean, I guess other people might say, people who maybe behind it would say, well, it's just a tool that we use so that blah blah blah. Do you get that?
Yeah, I'm sure that'll be their defense. Yeah. But it really is it is a monopolistic and sort of violation of antitrust
and in conjunction
rules,
with these other things.
In conjunction with these other things that makes it, I think makes it hard to compete. With Apple. So if they're going to do, take these measures, make it, difficult to message, make it difficult for app developers, or make it difficult to use apps across phones, those types of things would go into the analysis. Then that's the kind of thing that the Justice Department, the FTC also, AGs like me are increasingly interested in enforcing, because we do have antitrust laws for a reason.
Yeah.
And those kinds of practices are unlawful.
Real quick, anything else with that one? The tactics, that's a big one that people will recognize, probably the texts, right?
Yeah.
Also, is it?
Yeah,
it's the most.
And it's also, like I said, the app feature, the way they've treated apps, those types of things.
Okay.
And so in general, just sort of monopolizing the market. And so, that competition is important, right? Yeah. And that is it's a cornerstone of our economy, a cornerstone of free enterprise, is being able to compete. And I think over time, because I have an iPhone.
Yeah.
So many people have iPhones, and so many people love their iPhones. We don't think about the fact that those features may be locking other potential innovators and businesses out of the market.
Kroger Albertsons.
Yeah.
You were involved in that too.
Yes, we have filed to oppose the proposed Kroger Albertsons merger. So on behalf of the state of Arizona and a number of other AGs, we filed with the FTC to oppose that merger on the grounds that it violates the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act, the country's antitrust laws. And it does. I mean, Joe, this is a really important case. Really important case. These are Fry's and Safeway stores. And I did, I think, 9 town halls all across the state of Arizona last year on this. And overwhelmingly, people said they're opposed to this merger because they're worried, rightfully so, that job losses will occur, that food prices will go up at a time when we're already dealing with inflation and high prices, that more food deserts will be created, more pharmacy deserts will be created. People, I think, don't think about that very often. But if stores if they find quote unquote synergies, which is always what happens in these mergers, right? Stores will be eliminated. Yeah. And that's particularly difficult, I think, in rural Arizona, where sometimes you only have one Safeway or one Fry's.
Well, and the business is saying what? That they're going to be, no, they have to do this to compete, and the price will actually be lower because they have to compete with Walmart, and Target, and all these other places that are coming up, right?
Yeah, and Amazon.
Have you ever seen that happen where there have been mergers
No.
like this and prices have gone down?
I've literally never seen that happen, Joe. And it's like they always say that, and then somehow it never happens. And so I don't think we just flat out weren't buying that line,
Okay.
and neither was the FTC. So we'll see how that goes. We're gonna fight right alongside the FTC against that proposed merger, and I think it's an example of again flexing that muscle around the antitrust laws, which are really important, and just for whatever reason, previous AGs weren't so interested in enforcing.
And Albertsons owns Safeway, so to be Albertsons, Safeway,
Yes.
and Fry's, all the major
Safeway,
stores
Fry's,
yeah.
Smith's up in northwestern Arizona.
Okay.
And they are two of the 7 largest employers in the state of Arizona,
Okay.
these two companies. They have, I think, something like 30,000 employees. And so this is just, one of the things that we learned, Joe, in these town halls was that these stores oftentimes are the sort of economic engine of a lot of small towns in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so it is not only important to individuals who may experience higher prices, but also to the economy of Arizona.
Okay. A couple more things here. All right, let's talk about the, where do you want to go next? Price fixing. That's going to take a while, I know, but the rental. This market, when I was doing stories, it was crazy how much. I was telling Jake, we gave awards to the dubious awards to the third, second, and first highest rate increase in year. Congratulations, this one, and wherever it is, $1,000 in a year. Crazy amounts.
Yeah.
So what is the allegation here?
So this is on the rent increases. So we filed a lawsuit against a company called RealPage, and 9 other entities. They're the largest very large landlords, some of the largest landlords in Arizona and frankly across the country. Companies like Greystar, Trammell Crow, and others, alleging that they were using an algorithm that RealPage had created that allowed all of these landlords to dump proprietary information into the software package by RealPage. Things like, Joe, rental unit sizes, square footage, what the current rent was, information about the community and the building, and then RealPage would spit out a rent price for the landlord that was essentially the same price that all the other landlords were charging.
Okay.
And then they all charged the same rent,
Right.
which was high. And I call it old-fashioned price fixing with new technology, because that's all it is. It's just old-fashioned collusion, and that's illegal.
How do they defend themselves? What would they say would be a reason they would do that?
That is a great question.
Yeah.
I have no idea how you defend against this, because it's just flat out illegal on the face of it.
Okay.
Under our antitrust laws and under our Consumer Fraud Act, we filed charges under both of those laws, because you know what else they were doing, Joe? They were actually, of course, they were not telling renters that they were doing this. So, and honestly, there's so many of these landlords who are involved in this scheme. You couldn't throw a rock in Phoenix or Tucson without hitting one of the buildings that were involved. And they were not telling renters that they were using this algorithm and this price fixing scheme. So unless you were incredibly sophisticated and you had done a lot of research, you were not going to know that your rent was set by RealPage.
We don't spend as much time on it, but the rent fees.
Yeah.
I know there are all kinds of these fees, and I know there's still, but I know even 6 months ago there were the valet trash fee, the shipping fee. I saw some that were paying for insurance for the common areas or the lighting for the, which you think would be included in the rent.
In the rent, yeah.
But do you look at those, or people? How do you?
I think it's a really fertile area to explore, to be honest with you. And we have just started talking about this in the office. Okay. These kinds of junk fees. Yeah. We talk about them often relative to tickets. for sporting events or for musical events, but I think they're really common in the rental space, and I think it's something that we're going to start looking at.
All right, let's go. The last one I mentioned was the this was a Tucson car dealer, but we could talk generally. But this was, and I've heard this before, where they advertise online a certain price and then they can't get it when they get into the place. What do they typically lead them somewhere else? What goes on?
Yeah, so this is a perfect example of something that we need to get the word out about, which is, if a dealership, this often happens with dealerships, with car, companies that are selling cars, but if they offer a price online, it turns out that it's just an attempt to lure you down to the dealership and then change the price once you get there. They cannot do that. That's a deceptive act under the Consumer Fraud Act. Okay. And so what you need to do is print that out or take a screenshot of it and take it with you and say, you offered this to me. You can't change that, and then walk right back out if they try to do that to you, and then call my office because we want to know about it.
So this car dealer you went after because they've been doing that. Apparently.
Essentially, yes.
Does it say you go down there and they say, well, we don't, that car sold. We've got this other one. It's like $1,000 more, but it's a beauty, and you're going to love it. I mean, but you don't know if they ever had the car or not. There are a lot of great car dealers out there. They're wonderful and they're up and up. Yes. I'm just saying, if that does happen, is that something that would be a problem then too, or it's harder to prove?
It's harder to, it's a little bit harder to prove, but it's certainly, I think, potentially a deceptive act under the Consumer Fraud Act. Okay. So it's something, if you think that happened to you, please feel free to come report it to us again at azag.gov. Okay. And we want to hear about it. And what's important about that, Joe, as you know, is once we start to see trends, that's when we can really dive into a serious investigation and deploy resources to it.
All right. So what's next? Spill it right here.
Oh, my gosh.
Exclusive here, better than everybody else.
There's so much.
Are there? Not what you're working on, but just other concerns you can think of.
Let me tell you, because we do have a big announcement coming up here tomorrow regarding an elder abuse case, and we filed in that case a charge under the Consumer Fraud Act for deceptive practices and for not providing the level of care that was promised by the nursing home. And we see this proliferation of memory care facilities that are not actually providing the standard of care that is required under the law, and luring people in with the promise of providing memory care or providing assisted living services, and then not actually providing that. In some cases, the worst case scenario, actual abuse, situations that no loved one should have to experience, no family should have to experience. And so we're going to get really aggressive going forward in utilizing the Consumer Fraud Act and enforcing our adult protective services laws to protect vulnerable adults, because we're a graying community, we're a graying state. We've got more and more elderly folks moving here, living here, and we need to protect them.
I didn't know you. I guess I didn't think about. It makes sense you would handle those kinds of cases involving. So elderly concerns was these senior centers.
Yes,
you would take those complaints.
Absolutely, as well. We stood up an elder justice unit, and we are working. And that includes a whole range of things, including physical elder abuse and financial elder abuse. So that's the other terrible thing that we're seeing is more and more people who are taking advantage of the elderly who are in their care financially. Okay. So that's something that people should report to the Attorney General's office as well. Everything from physical elder abuse to financial abuse, stealing the money of an elderly person who has become incapacitated, those kinds of things.
Okay. What is, and this was always kind of the issue that I had, what is considered to be the line between fraud and maybe just something that is a frowned upon business practice? You know?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I could do stories on the frowned upon business practice.
Yeah.
But a lot of lawyers I talked to said, "Oh, I can't take that case. It doesn't have this or this." But
yeah, I mean that it's kind of fact dependent. But fraud, requires a state of mind, requires an attempt to defraud an individual, requires a deceptive practice or an unfair practice. There are a series of elements in the Consumer Fraud Act, whereas a bad business practice might be just something that's just one step below that. So.
Okay. All right. Now, we've talked a lot about protecting consumers, and we're with the Better Business Bureau here. A lot of members are businesses, good businesses who've taken that step to be accredited and all. And what would you say are there? I don't know how to phrase it actually, but are there things that businesses can do that they're not doing? Where do you see businesses kind of having? It's tough. I know this is a very general question, but do you see? You know what I'm saying? Is it a common thing? Is it not communicating maybe with consumers? Is it not being transparent, which may be an issue? Is it not having things in a contract that you see? Is it, what can businesses do better?
I mean, so many different things, but number one, I think, shameless plug for BBB, be a member, and transparency, I do think is very important. One of the things that we have been going after is in that nursing home context. A lot of nursing homes were and still are engaging in secrecy clauses, arbitration clauses, where they try to keep secret any settlement agreements that they have.
Oh yeah.
That's not good.
No.
And we sued to eliminate that in one case, and we're going to continue to do that. Transparency is really important. And then the other thing I would say, Joe, is if you're a business and you're doing the right thing, and like you said, so many businesses are doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And you see a bad apple in your own industry,
report
report the bad apple, or try to police the bad apple, or talk to that entity and say, "Hey, what are you doing? This is not good for our industry."
Yeah.
And I think that would be so much better for our economy, for industries, for businesses, if there was a more self-policing going on rather than just saying, "Okay, I'm doing the right thing."
Right.
And that's great. If you're doing the right thing, that's good. But if there are other bad apples, bad actors in the industry, find some way to call attention to that.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good. I think we've gone on. I was going to ask you a question about a lot of people are going to want to know when you go after, so you go after the price fixing in the rental units and you go after Apple smartphone and all, people are going to want to know, do I get any money out of that?
Yeah.
Is there settlement, and do they get any, or where does the money go usually with this?
Yeah, usually that's so it's case dependent. I will say on the RealPage landlord lawsuit, that is absolutely our hope, is to get rent back for people who, so for instance, in that case, we did a regression analysis on, I think, 30,000 apartment units in the Valley.
Wow.
And the landlords that weren't using RealPage versus the landlords that were using RealPage, it was a 12% difference.
Oh, wow.
So renters in RealPage buildings, I'll call them, paid 12% more on average than folks who weren't. I want to get that rent back for them. And so I want to restore, that's restitution. And wherever I can, we try to get restitution for consumers who've been harmed. And then we want an injunction against these landlords using this software package in the future.
That's great. All right, so you can go, if you're listening, you can go to azag.gov, and you can see all the cases that you've brought, and you can file a complaint there. You can also then go to bbb.org, and you can file a complaint there. Actually, what I'd hope you do is go first before you hire somebody, check reviews out, right? Check reviews out, see what they've done, and then hire based on that. And if you do have a complaint, though, go back there and complain so other people can see it. And then you can let me know what's going on, too. I won't necessarily be solving the problem anymore, but I'd love to hear from you. joeknowsbetter.bbbcommunity.org. joeknowsbetter.bbbcommunity.org. We just started this page, so, man, it's hard for me to to even spit out. But but you can see all that we're doing there, podcasts and videos and those kinds of things. Kris, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Joe.
AG Kris Mayes, really appreciate it. And that's it. I'm Joe Ducey with the Better Business Bureau, serving the Pacific Southwest, helping businesses and consumers get it right. See you next time. Before hiring, go to bbb.org, check reviews, and for accredited businesses that agree to operate ethically. And see all my podcasted videos, joeknowsbetter.bbbcommunity.org.